this article in the Washington Post, I would just be so embarrassed. If I were the editor of the Washington Post, or just the city editor, and I went on vacation, or the op-ed editor, I went on vacation and came home and found this in my paper, heads would roll. There would be firings all around. This is by Rosa Brooks, who's a law professor at Georgetown University and co-founder of the Transition Integrity Project. And I go back to it because my satire doesn't do it justice. It's actually funnier and uglier and stupider than my satire. So she is co-founder of the Transition Integrity Project. I wonder what the point of that is. Well, the point is that they want to study what will happen during the transition and how to keep the integrity in our transition of power, because we're famous for the peaceful transition of power, or we were. So this is what she writes. And again, this is the article. We wanted to know what's the worst thing that could happen to our country during the presidential election. President Trump has broken countless norms, as all kinds of Norm Fredericks is at Norm Smith. He's broken all those norms, countless norms, and ignored countless laws during his time in office. I don't want to go off on a million tangents, but I do have to say, they keep saying this stuff, but they never have an example. Like, what laws has he broken? All right, never mind. We wanted to know what's the worst thing that could happen. President Trump has broken countless norms and ignored countless laws during his time in office. And while my colleagues and I at the Transition Integrity Project didn't want to lie awake at night contemplating the ways the American experiment could fail, we realized that identifying the most serious risks to our democracy might be the best way to avert a November disaster. So we built a series of war games. We sought out some of the most accomplished Republicans, Democrats, civil servants, media experts, pollsters, and strategists around, and asked them to imagine what they do in a range of election and transition scenarios. A landslide for Joe Biden resulted in a relatively orderly transfer of power. Every other scenario we looked at involved street-level violence and political crisis. Nice country you got here. Shame if anything happened to it. Only a landslide for Joe Biden will prevent the thing you fear most. You don't like your city burning? You're afraid these Black Lives Matter radicals are going to come to your house, burn down your neighborhood? No. Just vote for Joe Biden if it's as long as it's a landslide. If it's close, no good. But if it's a landslide, so don't any one of you who fails to vote for Joe Biden is bringing this on yourself. So now let me just read you this scenario from all these accomplished Republicans and Democrats and civil servants and drunks and people lying under the table, the guys who clean up the Washington Post offices. Everybody has the greatest minds of our generation fed these into their computer-like skulls and came out with the scenario. On the morning of Election Day, writes Rosa, false stories appear online claiming that Biden has been hospitalized with a life-threatening heart attack and the election has been delayed. Every mainstream news organization reports that the rumors are unfounded, but many Biden supporters, confused by the bogus claims, stay home. Still, by late that night, most major networks have called the election for Biden. But Trump refuses to concede, alleging on Twitter that, all caps, millions of illegal aliens and dead people have voted in large numbers and that the uncounted ballots are all fake votes. Social media fills with posts from Trump supporters alleging that the election has been stolen in a deep state coup, and Trump-friendly pundits on Fox News and OAN, echo the message. You got to say that when you say Fox News and OAN, you go, Soon, Attorney General William Barr, do it again, William, no. Soon, Attorney General William Barr opens an investigation into unsubstantiated allegations of massive vote-by-mail fraud and ties between Democratic officials and Antifa. Massive pro-Biden street protests begin, demanding that Trump concede. The president tweets that, all caps again, because the president only tweets in all caps, real patriots must show these Antifa terrorists that citizens who love the Second Amendment will never let them steal this election. 3 exclamation marks. Around the nation, violent clashes erupt. Several people are injured and killed in multiple incidents. The reports conflict about their identities and who started the violence. Meanwhile, Trump declares that, all caps, unless this carnage ends now, he will invoke the Insurrection Act and send our incredibly powerful military and their ominous weapons into the streets to teach these anti-American terrorists a lesson. At the Pentagon, the Joint Chiefs of Staff convene a hurried meeting to discuss the crisis, and it's not even Thanksgiving yet. That's what's going on in Rosa's imagination. It's like, that'll be, that your 50 minutes are up, Rosa, and so just send your check to the psychiatrist and we'll be fine. This is what is running as an op-ed. You know, it really is interesting. If you ever just want to make the comparison just for fun, read the op-eds in the Washington Post and read the op-eds in the New York Times, and then read the op-eds in the Wall Street Journal, which are more right-wing. They're right-wing. See which one of them sounds like this. This is an op-ed written by a 12-year-old. I mean, truly, not a 12-year-old today, because 12-year-olds are no longer educated. But when I was 12, I could have written an op-ed at about this level. Better prose, probably, but this is the level of thought of an adolescent. So it's Trump who's going to say, oh, these mail-in voters. Who could ever think that mail-in votes, who could ever say that mail-in votes are suspect? Only Trump would ever say that. Here's Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who ran the DNC, the Democratic Party, back in 2016, the last election. Here's a report on her from CNN talking about mail-in votes.
Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz argues a mail-in ballot has wrong written all over it.
It'd be a risky experiment for us with an election that has stakes as high as a presidential election does. We've never done a mail-in ballot statewide.
Wasserman Schultz is worried about signature fraud, disenfranchising college students, getting addresses wrong, and having private donors instead of states footing the bill. She favors seating the delegates already chosen.
But there's a way to solve this without totally redoing this and causing more chaos.
My favorite part of this is that Trump is going to claim the election was stolen. First of all, elections can be stolen. That happens in some countries. It's never happened here, I don't believe. Maybe once, maybe one of the Kennedy election. Maybe Kennedy stole an election. But other than that, I don't think it's happened here. But the idea that Trump is not going to accept the results of the election as if this were an intolerable breach in the protocol of our nation, right? Where here is Hillary after the last election, Hillary Clinton after the last election cut 15.
I think it's also critical to understand that, as I've been telling candidates who have come to see me, you can run the best campaign, you can even become the nominee, and you can have the election stolen from you.
So why is it okay when she does? Because she's not Trump. Trump, orange man bad. It is the orange man. She's not Trump. And who claims it's going to be stolen now? Who is making the most claims that Trump won't leave office, that the election is going to be stolen? When he can put a sentence together, it's Joe Biden who's cut 14.
It's my greatest concern, my single greatest concern. This president's going to try to steal this election.
That's his greatest concern. Here's a paragraph later on in this Rosa Brooks op-ed in the Washington Post, where democracy dies in supercilious stupidity. She says, in every exercise that we played out, all the war games we played out, both teams sought to mobilize their supporters to take to the streets. Team Biden repeatedly called for peaceful protests, because we know the left only calls for peaceful protests. They never call for punching Trump in the face. They never put out videos of Trump being shot. They never put out Julius Caesar in New York, where Trump is Julius Caesar and he gets assassinated. They never hold up a mock of Donald Trump's head as if it had been cut off. They never do that. They never do that. They're so peaceful. It's almost like when they open their mouths to speak, harp music comes out. That's how peaceful they are. Team Biden repeatedly called for peaceful protests, while Team Trump encouraged provocateurs to incite violence, then used the resulting chaos to justify sending federalized guard units or active duty military personnel into American cities to restore order, leading to still more violence. Who is it who justifies violence? NPR just issued an apology for its publication of an interview with the author of a new book entitled In Defense of Looting. They had this article where they interviewed her, and she said, this is Vicky Osterwell wrote this book In Defense of Looting. She says, looting strikes at the heart of property, of whiteness, and of the police. It gets to the very root of the way those three things are interconnected, and also it provides people with an imaginative sense of freedom and pleasure and helps them imagine a world that could be. And I think that's part of it that really doesn't get talked about, that riots and looting are experienced as joyous and liberatory. So encourages the violence, but they're going to call for violence. They're going to call for only peaceful protests with some joyous celebratory looting. Okay, the fact that they imagine themselves to be the peaceful ones is really worth its weight in gold.